Chapter 16. Thea. News about Paxton's demise changed the mood of this morning's agenda. I could tell Austin was putting up a front for our sake. His best friend was hung like a scarecrow at a local cornfield for everyone to see, before officials heard about it and pulled him down. His body was mangled, the condition Reese left him in, leaving a large pit in my stomach. For a second, I placed myself in Paxton's shoes, thinking that it could have been me hanging on that stake, left for vultures to pick on what's left of me. The cruelty of my fated mate kept me on edge. It was hard for me to believe that he was the same guy I drove through town with, the same guy who promised me new beginnings. I felt so damn foolish for thinking that he could change for my sake, and felt so burdened with his target still on my back. But after the three of us sat down for breakfast, I felt a little more confident in Austin's words and his plan. He shared very little about himself, just enough for me to understand his meta. As for the rest of his pack, he had plenty to say. I gave him my life story, at least the bits and pieces that seemed relevant. By the end of our meal, I could tell that Gideon was somewhat at ease, and we spent the rest of the morning touring Highlander Land. Unfortunately, Gideon was on call and had work to do. I told him that it was fine, I had Austin. He could take a step back from me for a bit to do what he had to. Once he left, Austin was pulled by one of his betas, too. He told me he'd be back, and to give him a couple of minutes. I took the time to walk around the snatched estate like it was already my home, peeping in and out of rooms like I owned the place. The mansion was quiet after the guys left, and I was tempted to step out for some fresh air myself, until I saw a woman in tactical gear similar to Gideon's enter through the foyer, making me stop dead in my tracks. Could she have been Renee? The fingers poking out of her fingerless gloves were bloody, as were the black layers of cover she had on her jacket. When she closed the door behind her and strutted forward, she finally noticed me, making an abrupt halt. "And you are?" she asked, raising a skeptical eyebrow at my presence. Thea McLeod, and you must be Austin's sister." I looked down at her gear, concerned. "I hope that's not your blood." "I came back from giving Paxton a proper burial." "Oh, Austin didn't say anything about you?" "Because he doesn't know." She squinted hard at me and then flashed me a fake smile. "So you're the famous Thea I keep hearing about?" "Yep, that's me." I snickered nervously. She offered me her bloody hand, and although disturbing, denying it would have been a sure slap in her face. So I held my breath and caked my fingernails with Paxton's blood, trying to school my face from being too revealing. Can I ask how you managed to get his body back from the authorities?" She snorted. "Trust me, you don't want to know." "Where did you bury him?" She released her grip and cocked her head aside. "Why are you so interested?" You're right. Besides, I barely knew the guy. We had one run-in at the cafeteria on campus, and I sucker punched him? Well, yeah, he was being handsy." She gave me a genuine smile. "I like you, Thea. You're unintimidated." Should I be? Most women Austin brings back home are. Well, I'm not like most women. I'm an alpha. I'd like to think that I could hold my own. Just as long as there's no fighting, right? I'll admit, I'm still rough around the edges. Gideon is training me. Gideon? He's my friend, and you'll be seeing a lot of him. Austin allowed him into the pack. Well, is he an Omega, a lone beta? As far as I know, he's human. She darted her eyes away from me and scoffed. "Oh, brother, what are you getting yourself into now?" "I know it's not ideal. It's not only ideal, it's not allowed in the Shifter Council," she said, cutting me off. Renee switched to a more hostile front, the idea of a human being in her pack leaving a bitter taste in her mouth. "Look, I know my brother may come off as desperate, but that doesn't mean that he's fuckable." I squinted, holding my cheeky comment to myself. "You can't make him bend over backwards for you. I won't allow him to turn into your floor mat. This Gideon character needs proper admission to this amusement park, a requirement that can't be overturned by a pretty face." "I think that's up to Austin to decide, don't you think?" She took 2 bold steps in front of me, her height towering over mine at 5'10". "He'll say just about anything to keep you, Thea. He's already playing footsies with lions in the den by being with you." I cover my own tracks. That's reassuring. I'm serious. I'm not looking to get swallowed up by Reese. The same could be said for this pack. You might not think I care, but I do. I know someone, and she took care of the scent issue. My fated mate can't find me anymore. For now. I'll keep a lock on it. Renee's chest inflated, her nose flaring up the more I spoke. Look, you don't have to like me or my methods. I get that you want to protect your younger brother. But if he wants to be with me, we need to break a few rules. I understand that he isn't a stranger to pissing off the Shifter Council, so Gideon being human shouldn't be a big deal. He's not sweating it, and neither am I. And as far as I'm concerned, we are the voices that have the final say around here. Not yet, you are. You still have to go through the mating ritual, and you know what that means, right? She smiled deviously. Real blood mixed with blood, as well as other tying bodily fluids at the peak of the full moon. It's the only way any of us would take your authority seriously. So I hope you brought something tasteful in your move and luggage, because this is going to be a bumpy ride for you. Only if I don't give a rat's ass about Austin. Are you saying you do? I heard how your first meetup with him went. Then you already know that your brother can come off as an acquired taste. Self-interest, I get it, but that's something you two have in common, right? No, not that. He doesn't know when to step off his own pedestal, and I could see where he gets it from. She cocked her head at me, letting the tip of her tongue line her fangs. That's some balls you got there, kid. We'll see who Austin listens to. Despite how important you might think you are, I am still his older sister. He respects me more. Next scene. I'd say I hit it off just fine with Austin's sister, rolls eyes. Sorry, I'm not the bring home to wolf mommy type of girl. I won't tuck my tail in between my legs and be stepped on. I had to put Austin in his place, and with the help of Gideon, I think I did just that. Only question was how long it'd pan out. I felt a relapse about to happen right around the corner with this talk of the mating ritual, which was scheduled for a couple of hours. The event needed to happen at a full moon, and fortunately for me, the harvest was ripe for the plucking. Materials for the celebration moved in increments, betas coming through the front door with all sorts of gear and food for the backyard party. It wasn't until the final hour did I start getting beaten down with nerves of how serious this fake relationship was. I then wondered, did his betas know this was a setup? Or did they honestly think that I was Austin's bride-to-be? As I stayed in a guest room, I started having doubts. The length I'd go to for my pack, it should be endless, shouldn't it? But my heart wasn't for Austin, it was for Reese. And even though he wanted me killed, a part of me still wanted him. Unfortunately for me, I had his number memorized. The temptation to give him a quick call was sitting on my shoulder as I leaned into the vanity mirror and thought deeply to myself. What would I say if he responded? Did I beg him to call off his dogs? Would he even listen to me? To reason? Did I honestly think that he hadn't been lying to me after that kiss? I wanted answers. I wanted closure. I wanted the words to come out of his mouth, to hear it in his own voice. Say that you want to kill me so I could move on. I whispered to myself, while tears pricked my eyes as I dialed the numbers. Then slap. I jumped as my ass cheeks made violent waves, the abruptness causing my reflexes to fling whomever snuck up behind me to slap them across the room. The crash against the nightstand forced my head to turn, my heart practically pounding against my chest. When I collected myself, I realized that history had repeated itself. That annoying alpha braggart sitting there on the marble floor sprawled out with a lampshade on his head, looking like an utter fool. Great to see that your talents are getting more natural for you, he chuckled, pushing the lamp off his lap. And here I thought that this foreplay would run stale. God, are you trying to get yourself killed? I huffed and then realized a tone coming from my phone. Shit, I must have dialed Reese by accident when Austin startled me. I panicked, juggling my cell phone in a rush to end the call from over the Bordeaux. Luckily, it only rang once. Come on. It takes more than a light shove to bring me down. Give me some credit. He grinned. Got the jitters, I see. He dusted himself off and got up on his feet, then settled the lamp back before turning to me. I'm fine. Then you should get dressed, he said, picking up a red two-piece dress from the bed. I didn't even realize he had brought me an outfit, as it probably went down with him when I tackled him off of me. But when Austin approached me with the stunning tribal piece, I was speechless. It was a curve-hugging beauty with a low-cut top and an asymmetrical skirt. It looked like something a belly dancer would wear, the embroidery and colors captivating. Personally, I think the color jade would look better on you, but this red really brings out your eyes. When Austin handed it to me, I stripped it from its hanger and gawked at it at eye level. I don't know what to say. Wait, how did you know my dress size? I don't, lucky guess. I pursed my lips. Thanks, why aren't you dressed? Doesn't take long for me to get ready. Only need about 5 minutes. I'm already groomed and ready to go. He moved me aside by stepping forward toward the mirror as he shaped his hair and gave himself a once-over. If there's one thing that could be said about Austin, it was that he was serious about how he looked in public and in private. He was an attractive guy, real charismatic, and he flaunted it at every turn, but then caught me staring at him from the mirror and pivoted to me, giving me those devious, lewd eyes. Do you need help getting undressed, or? I gritted down my jaw at his unfiltered comment. Well, if you can walk yourself out of my room, I'd love to do it myself. He grabbed me by my shoulders and looked down at me tenderly. Hey, don't worry, it'll all be over soon. The betas do a little ritual dance, they transform and howl to the moon, and before you know it, we are mixing our blood inside a bowl. And then we drink. Although we might have to skip the whole howling part, for obvious reasons. Aren't we supposed to transform too? Yeah, but you told me that you can't, so I won't. He smiled. We have food and then get the rest of the night to ourselves. Please tell me that the couple you locked in the basement isn't on the menu. He laughed. No, don't worry, they are not. So, you're considering sparing them? What would you like me to do with them, Thea? My eyes grew. Was Austin seriously asking me for my opinion? We keep them alive, I said quickly and confidently. I'm not real big on eating human hearts. Then alive they will remain. Now get dressed. You don't want to be late. I know how long you women take getting all spruced up. He left me to it, and not too long after, I found myself standing underneath the moon in my red dress, outside in the chilly evening skies. The backyard was packed, but not in the traditional sense. Only betas were invited, and Austin had about 2 dozen. They were all here, standing tall in their tribal ensemble, with their faces painted and their bellies bare, waiting for Austin and I to take the altar. Gideon was there as well along the sidelines with Renee. Even though she was a beta, she refused to take part in the dance in what I assumed was a stand against the whole fake relationship bit. Well, at least she showed her support by being here, even if it was only for her younger brother. Once Austin took to my side, I did a double take. I had to catch myself gawking because the man could seriously clean up. He wore the same shade of deep burgundy red like me, with his open vest tunic lined with fur. My alpha had that whole native primitive vibe going on, down to his ivory knee-high harem pants, the black paint around his arms, and the jumbo charms around his neck that looked like prayer beads. The tanned skin looked tempting on his sculpted chest. It really brought out his sex appeal. I cleared my throat and looked away before he got the wrong impression, as I could feel His Highness already smiling proudly behind me. When we made our way to the altar, his betas hummed. They hummed and swayed until we sat down. They broke out a full-blown dance soon after, with drums, chanting, and vibrant energy. Suddenly, the shame of guilt sautéed in the pit of my gut. How could Austin have agreed to all of this being fake? I was beginning to think that none of them knew what the real score was. I turned to him skeptically as they danced for us, Austin staring back at me lovingly. You look beautiful, Thea. He smiled. I can't wait to peel that dress off of you tonight. I gave him a deadpan look. Boy, you really know how to ruin the mood, don't you? Self-sabotage is a gift, maybe even a skill. Like keeping your betas clueless as to what we are doing? I said to him in a whisper. He instantly frowned and turned sympathetic toward me. Werewolf ears are sharp. We'll talk more about it tonight. He was right. No, I was right. The fact that he didn't want them to hear our conversation was proof that he was blindsiding his pack. I gulped, and hard, looking at them in front of me, pouring their hearts and souls into our union. After 20 minutes of ritual dancing, Austin and I bonded our blood. With a sacred ritual bowl, we knelt before the fire and took turns slicing down our palms with a pocket knife. For Austin, this would be his second time. As for me, it would be my first. The adrenaline pumping through me kept me from feeling the pain. And while I was still a hybrid, I could regenerate, just not at the rate I'd like to. We bled into the bowl together while Monica stirred with the wand. She gave me a side look and a smile. one that I couldn't decode. I didn't know how she felt about me being her alpha. Maybe she was just excited to have another one. I brought promise to the pack, and nothing was more thrilling than a new start. Once she chanted the words, we drank, our futures united and our destinies sealed. Chapter 17. Thea? The sweaty palms didn't go away, same with the taste of metal in my mouth. I'd heard of mating rituals, but I'd never expected it to be this incredibly nerve-wracking. Regardless, I had this strange feeling that fate brought us here, seeing as tonight was the night of a full moon. For whatever reason our stars aligned, Austin was my man now, and he belonged to me as I belonged to him. And this pack, the Highlander Wolves, they were my people. Well, it sure sounded less demanding on paper. After the ritual was over, we ate along the bonfire. I sat near my alpha, and Gideon took to my other side. He congratulated me, even though he knew what the others didn't. To be honest, I was shocked that Renee didn't pop the truth and shouted it to the heavens just to make me look like a greedy little witch. I had the hardest time believing that she thought all of this was real. Could she have been in denial? The energy she'd given me earlier spelled charade master, like maybe she knew I was using her brother for protection. She sat on the other side of him, chowing down like a wild animal on the thick chunks of beef meat on bone. Oh, I hoped to God it was beef meat. Our betas were just as uncivilized. Earlier, I got to see them transform before the moon. Certainly, that left a primal mark on tonight's fun. Let the fangs hang low, let your inner beast glow. Who was I to comment? Granted, I had no real bias against them turning, only myself. The stain of fear of werewolves dated back to my earlier years, when I was still in diapers, where I was still fighting visions of my pack's demise. Even if they were the ones fending for themselves, I saw things no baby should have gone through. After the second hour, the bonfire went out. The pack had their fill of drinks, food, and laughs. Overall, they were accepting people, opening their arms to me for the most part. It was a refreshing feeling. Besides the few stragglers, aka Austin's sister and possibly Bailey, everyone was friendly toward me as their new partner Alpha. I retired for the night around 11. The floor below me was still rowdy, but I was exhausted, and this master bed with fresh sheets was calling to me. I dimmed the lights and started undressing, the sound of someone walking my way making me stop. I heard faint giggling followed by Austin whispering. Was he talking to Bailey? Well, it sounded more like he was disciplining her than them having a friendly conversation. All of the giggling stopped, and a pair of feet made down the hallway before Austin opened the double door. What was that about? I asked him, the fake smile on his face not convincing me one bit. Nothing. Bailey just being Bailey, he said, closing the door behind him. I'm almost reluctant to ask, were you two a thing? He smirked. Nah. Nah, that's it? I snorted. Now I know you're lying for sure. Are you jealous? He winked. You wish. He walked over to me with wanton eyes and gently ran his hands down my shoulders. It doesn't matter either way. I'm moving on, and I'd like to keep my old habits history. Meaning? I know you're not the exclusive type with Gideon, but I don't want to be with anyone but you, Thea. Why the sudden change in heart? Did your third leg get tired of running rounds across the field? I feel like I'm getting a second chance, and I don't want to fuck it up. Against whatever you might think, you mean a lot to me, and I want to do my best this time around. I couldn't hold back a smile. Guy had me feeling all warm and special inside. But the fact of the matter still remained, he was blindsiding his family, and I wanted him to know how I felt about it. Austin, I appreciate you trying to do your best here, not only for you, but for us. That being said, I don't think it's a good idea to not tell everyone what we're doing here. I think telling them is a stupid idea. Does Renee know? How the hell should I know? To each their own, he said, eager to brush the topic off. He peeled off of me so fast that my skin might as well have been made of fire. I knew this was eating him up inside, too. It had to have. He paced, deep in thought, trying to wrangle something sensible to tell me. Well, what did you tell her? I told her straight facts, that we need to get the mating ritual underway while the full moon is out. I had this impression that she knew the full story. I'd told her how we met, and in return she told me to back off before it's too late. Because of Reese or because of something else? The Reaper Wolves. Look, I didn't give her specifics because it didn't matter. I already had one mate walk away from me. If they knew you were in it for yourself, I'd lose all of the respect I have, and it's already hanging by a thread. So it's true? They think this is genuine? Do they know I'm a hybrid? Well, yeah. If Bailey knew, the entire pack did just as fast. She's a real gossip, that one. I took his arm, Austin looking down at me conflicted. I felt sorry for him, and I wanted him to know that he could trust me. I understand why now, and I support you. Granted, I continue to feel terrible for lying to them. But this betrayal is justifiable, Austin. You're looking after your pack. I can't imagine the burden you must carry on a consistent basis. Trying to keep this pack alive and in order must be putting a serious strain on your psyche. He grinned. Don't start softening up on me now, babe. I'm stronger than I look. You don't have to be around me. You can let the armor slip from time to time. I know you have a heart underneath all that narcissistic, chauvinistic, overbearing attitude of yours, and I can see it through all of that roughness. If I hadn't, tonight never would have happened. I might be desperate, but I'm not stupid. I grinned, noticing I'd caught poor Austin off guard with my kind words. I should wash up and head to bed. I'll see you tomorrow, Austin. The ownership of this exquisite bedroom was done in silence. If Austin were smart, he'd take the hint. I had the guest bedroom prior, but I wanted to be spoiled. After all, it wasn't every day I got to spend a night in a lavish contemporary suite such as this one. I felt him there, standing in the middle of the bedroom while I made for the private bath. I closed the door behind me before I walked over to turn the faucet on, the sound of water tapping marble putting my mind at ease. I was so exhausted that I just might pass out in this luxurious bath, the steam wafting through my nose opening up my senses. And this right here made sense, as striking as it was for me to believe. I had been nervous at first, but now I was more comfortable with the idea of this plan of ours actually working. Being with Austin granted me access to protection, and it gave him a means to strengthen and expand his pack. With a solid pair of alphas as a foundation, Austin's rep was well underway of repair. Austin had a mate, and he wouldn't be seen as the weakest link anymore. Lone betas might even agree to join us, giving up more power in numbers. And once all was said and done, I could work on the Onyx Wolves and finally make my father's death worth something. I stripped the lovely dress off of my skin and took a step inside the heated rainfall. It was true what they said about girls and their steamy bathroom escapades. Given I was no devil, I did like the feeling of a raging inferno running down my skin. It was alleviating, relaxing, and it opened up my pores like nobody's business. The first step was always the best part of it, followed by my hair follicles being tamed by the soft fingers of water strumming down my back. Tonight's shower would be different, though. Tonight I had an intruder. Forget the fact that he could hear the water running with those heightened werewolf senses, or the fact that I'd shooed him away with a modest good night. Austin knew that I was in here, and yet I heard soft creaking and saw the door move through the hazy glass shower door. I held my breath, the bastard bent on getting his finisher. He was a traditionalist, the mating ritual not complete without an evening pounding. Austin, I said, but his name was lost in the pit of my throat. It came off as a fragile whisper, one that I couldn't even hear through all of that running water. I felt his body inching closer to me, his soft-footed gait making me even more anxious. I looked down at the door handle as if it had a lock, then darted my eyes back up at the growing shadow now inches away from it. Austin, what are you doing? I finally could croak. Aren't you going to let me in, Thea? He said, and I swear I could see him in a greedy smile. I could use a little privacy, jackass. Privacy? We are practically married now, there's no such thing. Once I saw the door budge, I immediately snatched the gold handle, the resistance I was giving him causing the facade to wobble. Stop playing hard to get, Thea. I just want to give you a nice, sensual rub-down. Forget it, he chuckled. Can't say I didn't try being reasonable about it. Just like that, he snatched the door and flung it right open, the power behind his swing causing me to stumble right into his chest. He caught me in his strong arms before I embarrassed myself, my feet nearly skidding on the slippery shower floor. It took me a second to realize how bare he was, the sensation of something prodding my belly button forcing me to look down. Don't worry, we'll get to that in a second, he swooned, tilting my head back up. For now, my eyes are up here, wet foot. Come on, be mad at him. What are you waiting for? Slap the bastard across the face and put him in his place. However bold and brazen he was, I couldn't find it in me to retaliate. My hormones took the wheel, Austin's hot bod crisscrossing wires in my head. I looked at him stark, with my mouth agape and my face as hot as a cherry. He didn't give me a second to reevaluate my choices here. Austin picking for me, and he chose more steam for tonight's shower. His breath tickled my misty lips, drawing closer to me, nudging my temptation to give in. His big hands ran a course over my slick curves, up my sides, and over the slopes of my breasts before one found my face. He held me tenderly, Austin showing me a softer side of him I didn't know existed. The way he slouched over to accommodate my height for that kiss sent waves in my stomach. Our first kiss, nothing like I'd imagined. The gesture was so smooth and simultaneous that I didn't notice him leaning me back inside the shower, my alpha closing the door behind us. As soon as the water hit us, we were both drenched, the heat amplifying the sensations Austin was firing through me. Our bodies collided like two animals in heat, our hands going everywhere they could reach. In no time, I found myself tossed against the wall, Austin holding me there, his body flush against mine. I'd been in denial, thinking that this gentle side of him could last any. Because once we were lost in the passion of it all, his lips found mine again, and this time he ravished me. This kiss was ravenous, needy, and desperate, as if his yearning had been finally quenched. It was a kiss of craving, and it left me breathless, wanting more. I couldn't wait any longer, my hand sliding down his stomach to his manhood. As soon as I touched him, Austin growled, and I felt his hand wrap around my neck, and he pulled my head closer to his, kissing me harder than ever before. He was rough, unapologetic, and hungry, the beast in him calling out to me in a bout of carnal lust and love. He released me from his grasp, pushing me away slightly so he could look at me. The desire burning in his eyes made my heart skip a beat. "You're killing me, Thea," he groaned. "Then punish me," I panted heavily as I looked up my eyes at him, Austin finally giving me a second to catch my breath. His hand gripped my ass and he pulled me hard against his hips. I gasped, feeling how hard he was beneath the water as his tip pressed between my folds. "This pussy is ripe for the fucking. Nice and swollen, too," he growled over my shoulder. Before he turned me over, my breasts spread across the ivory marble wall. He perched my ass with both hands, cupping and kneading them like he was about to have himself a full-course meal. The admiration of my curves made me feel all the more desirable, Austin taking the time to appreciate and worship his alpha queen. With a hand over my shoulder, Austin guided himself forward slowly until his tip slipped inside me, my walls parting to take him in. I stifled a moan, my fingers against the shower wall curling up just as my body clenched. Alpha men were known to be very well endowed, for the sole purpose of hitting the mark every time their mate was in heat. I already felt his head prodding the cushion of my womb, Austin holding it there, letting my body adjust to his size. A raunchy grunt escaped his lips when he pulled back, my warmth captivating every inch of him. I whimpered softly, my hips buckling in response, but he kept moving, driving deeper and deeper into me. "Jesus Christ, you're as tight as a fucking knot," he growled, his thrusting making me bite down at my lip in pleasure. Our lovemaking wasn't slow and methodical. It was aggressive, wild, and raunchy, like two wolves mating. He grabbed me by the back of my head, taking a handful of hair in his fist. When his fingers dug deep into my wet, mangled tresses, I gasped, and he tilted my head aside until I felt the tip of his fangs graze along my flesh. The anticipation was killing me. I was never bitten before, let alone marked by an alpha. A mix of feelings surged through me before the bite did, my body seized with both pain and pleasure. My entire body shook as a wave of thirst swept over me. I yelped, my body trying to withdraw from the feeling of being claimed, but his grip on my hair kept me still. The moment I heard him suck another mouthful had me sweltering between my legs. Without warning, Austin broke me, my orgasm growing closer by the second. The sound of water smacking my ass cheeks as he pounded, coupled with this sinful feeling of him sinking his fangs into my neck, was too much to resist. My eyes rolled back into my head, and for the briefest moment, time seemed to stand still as every nerve ending in my body erupted at once. His hands loosened their hold on my scalp, but he didn't release me entirely. Instead, he held me cradled against him as I continued to convulse, breaking into a climax that left my throat sore. I was a real screamer this time around, and I didn't hold back. I spilled dirty words, begging him to fuck me harder. I pounded into him, my ass grinding into his groin on its own. I couldn't stop, not until I had my fix of Austin. He squeezed my breast with one hand and clamped down on my neck with the other as he held me tight, his circulating hips seeking his own happy ending. Once I felt him burrow inside me and hold himself there. His seed penetrated me, its warmth both relaxing and alleviating. Austin exhausted me, and I could tell by his heavy panting over my shoulder that I'd tuckered him out too. With a satisfied release, my alpha pulled out, drips of cum pooling down my inner thighs and his pulsating head. "Good God, you're a nice little fuck," he whispered along my bloody neck, the side of his fang brushing against the shell of my ear. "I'm ready for a round 2 when you are." Chapter 18. It was Thursday morning, and I was contemplating wearing a brown bag over my head for the rest of my stay here. Not only did I succumb to my horny little wants, I gave in to Austin, the guy I could barely stand only a few days ago. I don't know, maybe I was being too harsh on myself, right? I mean, the guy looked positively delicious, and he had a talent of making my sweet pot sing hallelujah up to the heavens. Not to mention, he was technically mine, so maybe this shame train wasn't so justified. Either way, I had a hard time reciprocating his love to me last night. As I sat along the edge of my bed, I started to beat myself up for not answering to the antidote of amore Austin had laid on me a few hours ago. It was so very abrupt, the way he looked deeply into my eyes and told me that he'd protect me to whatever end. I was stunned, speechless, like I had a rag dipped in the sands of Aswan, Egypt, in my mouth. He was taking this relationship so seriously that I was starting to believe we were an actual couple. But if I gave him an inch, he'd take it all the way. I had him on a leash made out of paper, but one nonetheless. If I started showing him how much I liked him back, he might get too cocky, and things like last night would happen often. But isn't that what I wanted? Deep inside, you want to fuck him till the sun blows out. I swear I was rolling happily in the dark side of the barnhouse nowadays. Dawning about my mixed feelings about Austin wasn't helping me any, so I got up, ready to go get breakfast downstairs. Austin had told me an hour ago that he had something to take care of with his sister Renee, so he wouldn't be back until maybe tonight. I didn't bother asking him why he'd be gone for so long, seeing as I felt it none of my business. I might have to start changing my mindset sooner rather than later, though, because his affairs were technically my affairs. As I walked out of my bedroom, I noticed Gideon. The sight of him down the hall made me stop my stride, the smile on my face greeting him. "Gladys is worried about you," he said straightly as he approached me, immediately changing my mood. "I tried giving her every excuse in the book on why you changed phones. She wants to hear your voice, Thea." I sulked. She slipped my mind. I've just been so busy that It's less how long it's been and more what you'll tell her, he interjected me, giving me a concerned look. "Have you told her anything?" "Besides telling her not to swing by the place, no." I choked. "Why on earth would you tell her that, Gideon? She's going to freak out!" "She already has. Her safety is important to me too, Thea. Reese already knows where you live. I gutted out the place as much as I could, and I'd rather not risk her exposure." "What do you mean, gutted out the place? Where are my things?" "In storage. Once Reese finds out that he can't track you, he'll find any angle he could get his hands on to find you, and it's best that Gladys doesn't fall within his crosshairs." I looked down and away from him disappointingly. He took my chin up and reeled my eyes back to him, the reassurance in his warm expression putting me at ease. "I know this isn't the life you deserve, but it's the one you need to maintain right now for survival. There's no job for you out there, Thea. No friends, no school, no—" "Being normal?" I sighed. "Yeah, I gauge that. Not until Reese and the Reaper Wolves are out of the picture. You have to take this seriously. You must plan here and remain in the mansion. Don't think of it as house arrest. Think of it as playing smart." "And the rightful residents of this place?" I cocked my brow smartly. "Sooner or later, someone's going to realize they went missing. I took care of it." "Do I want to know what that means?" "I didn't kill them if that's what you're thinking," he reassured me. "In any case, this place is yours. Treat it as such until the storm blows over." "Then what's the first line of business?" "Recruitment. I've already had a talk with Renee and Austin." "And what am I doing in all of this? Am I just here for appearances?" No, you can put an honest effort into the plan by being an alpha. Enlighten me with what you think that entails. Getting to know your new family, it's a start. Fine, I wanted to pout. It just seems you and Austin are the ones plotting the big move here. You'd made your opinion clear about me hunting down Reese. Now that I'll have the army to kill him, do you feel the same way? I answered him with silence. Your connection with him must die out first, Thea. You do understand that, right? I glanced to the side and mumbled, right. And about Gladys? Honestly, I don't know what to say to her. He gave me a sweet smile. You know her better than I do. I trust you'll figure it out. Gideon leaned his lips over mine and we shared a soft kiss. Usually locking lips with him melted my worries away. This time I was too overburdened to feel it. Next scene. After more training with Gideon, specifically honing my alpha telekinetic powers through meditation, I finally stopped procrastinating and called my aunt. Honesty was the best policy, right? Unless you were my overprotective, over-antsy, eccentric, and erratic witch. With the phone to my lips, I was ready to fire a slew of lies for her burning ears, until I heard her cry, the waterworks unraveling me. Okay, so she didn't take it as bad as I thought she would. She didn't mention bringing the entire world to its knees to find me, so that was a good sign. Instead, she cursed until her accent became too strong to understand through the phone. I insisted not telling her where I was, but kept reassuring her that I was safe and with Gideon. Yeah, I know. Dragging him into this was like tossing him in front of a train. However, his involvement in this dilemma of mine was the only thing that brought her blood pressure down. It meant that I was actually safe, and she finally understood why Gideon had asked her about that walking warding trick recently. After I told her the entire terrifying tale, right down to my mating ritual, she simmered down. I heard a lot of I told you so's tied with a mouthful of regret, but at the end of the call, we reached a compromise. I promised I'd reach out to her if my pack and Gideon couldn't handle it. She told me that she loved me more than I'd ever know. I told her the same, the sassy island woman actually bringing happy tears in my eyes. I missed her, and I made sure she knew that. I also made sure she followed my instructions of keeping her head tucked and out of trouble. Telling her the truth uplifted a lot of stress on me, as did hearing that she'll be okay. The hour-long phone call was chased with a 2-hour-long meet and greet with a few Highlander betas. I followed Gideon's advice and decided that now was a great time to do my part. I was on house arrest, being an alpha, getting to know the werewolves who had adopted me. They talked and interacted like brothers and sisters, getting into each other's hair, and were overall in the younger age range, with only a few of them having their own families within the pack. This is what college must feel like, I thought to myself. The rowdy but happy-go-lucky vibes making me feel right at home. After a while, I needed some me time. I marched right into the library at 7 p.m. with the laptop that Hema let me borrow, and I logged into my Gmail. I had a real habit of checking it at least once or twice a week to stop the flow from reaching 10K again. Spending half of my day deleting crap wasn't fun, but to my surprise, I had something from Carly in my inbox sent recently. I opened it up and skimmed through. She was worried. I hadn't shown up for work, I hadn't answered her calls or texts, and it says here that she was now seeing some guy. I snorted and rolled my eyes. Who was Mr. Right this month? It seemed like she was cycling through these guys like free 30-day trials, except this guy was someone special, and she wanted me to meet him right away. Since I was logged into my Google account, my chat was on. She dinged me as soon as I finished reading her email, asking me where I'd been hiding. I didn't give her the details, no matter how much she begged. The conversation was quickly turning into one of those well-crafted guilt trips, and I suddenly found myself making plans to meet her in 2 hours. Grieve. I couldn't disappoint her, not my work bestie, so I got dressed and told my pack that I was going for a walk. Despite the skeptical exchanges among them, they trusted me. I paced myself in the chilly autumn air until I was 3 blocks away, then called an Uber to Mimi's, our competitor cafe down the block from Moonbuck's. Carly swore their pumpkin spice latte crushed ours, the girl downing at least 2 of them per day. Even though I was itching to get out and see her, the fact that this meetup was so close to our job was making me uneasy. Regardless, I waited with my hands in my light jacket pockets and my head constantly looking over my shoulders. After about 7 minutes in, I got tired of waiting. She was the one who set the time and place. Why on earth was she late? Growing restless, I decided to bucket down the street. A bad feeling started crawling on my skin, and if there was anything Gladys taught me, it was to go with my gut when something felt amiss. "Come on, Carly, would it kill you to show up on time for once?" I grumbled under my breath, my rushed steps clacking hard against the pavement. I pulled out my phone to set up my Uber ride until I turned the corner and this strange sensation washed over me. My heart skipped a beat when I picked up his scent. I came to an abrupt stop, my eyes instantly darting north when a pair of shadows greeted me. "Thea, glad you can make it. Sorry it took us a while to get here. I hope we didn't keep you waiting for too long." "Reese." "Oh, I see that you're baffled? Impressed?" Carly giggled, cozying up to my fated mate who stood there with a winning smile on his terrifying face. The true image of a happy couple. She stroked down his herringbone vest and kicked her leg up flirtingly. "Thea, allow me to introduce you to my boyfriend, Reese." No, this wasn't real. There's no way this was a trap. I'd been seriously baited, the ease in pulling me out making me nauseous. How could I have been so blindsided and careless? I had one bout of stir-crazy and I rebelled, against Austin, against Gideon and Gladys. This here was downright stupid, and now that I was caught, I didn't know what to do. Well, Thea, don't just stand there and gawk at him, say something. Carly edged me. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. It's nice to meet you." "It's a pleasure," Reese said, the eerie aura coming off of him making me stiff. He offered me a handshake and I considered my options. There was nothing stopping him from snatching me up right here and now, so I made up an excuse. Sorry, sweaty hands, such an annoying reaction, really. I'm getting it checked out," I said, then cleared my throat. "Ah, yes, she gets that way when she's around hot guys, don't you, Thea?" "Don't be so modest," he chuckled, reeling Carly in with a smooth arm. "I'm the lucky one." She giggled. "Oh, stop." Carly, can I talk to you and—" "With a smell so sweet?" Reese cut me off, whispering sensually into Carly's ear. He turned to me, those eyes of his brightening up. "Doesn't she look delicious, Thea?" My heart was racing. Every part of me was telling my ass to bucket, but I couldn't leave without Carly. Reese was dangerous, and she was only caught up in this mess because of me. When Reese turned back to her and brushed his lips over to her neck, I held my breath. It wasn't the heavy PDA that made me uneasy. It was how dangerously close Reese, a werewolf, was close to Carly's throbbing jugular vein. "Reese," Carly stifled, curling up to Reese, suckling on her neck in front of me. She was melting in his arms, an anger burning inside me so hot that it made me act out of line. "You let her go, Reese," I growled under my breath, Carly snapping out of his spell and turning to me worryingly. "Thea, what's wrong? Is something—" She wouldn't get to finish her sentence, Reese doing what I was afraid he would. My chest jumped the instant he sunk his greedy fangs into Carly's neck, his hand over her lips muffling her screams. She writhed and bucked, but Reese's hold on her was strong, the fight in her gone before it began. I didn't wait until her body stopped moving. As soon as he bit into her, I knew she was done for. She was turned. "You son of a bitch!" I panicked, my words fleeting from my shattered breath before I pivoted and ran for my life. Chapter 19. I ran, my breath scratching at the pit of my throat. Dry air continued to run down my winded lungs. I didn't dare look back, the street I'd been in far in the distance. For the first time in my life, I ran like a werewolf with speed I wasn't privy to. Fear propelled me as far from Reese as I could possibly get, the howling in the background pushing my feet to move even faster, until I reached a neck of the woods that seemed more dangerous than reassuring, feeling like I might have boxed myself inside wolf territory. A werewolf had the upper hand in terrain such as this. In their true form, they were practically invisible, and seeing as Reese could transform and I couldn't, I was putting myself at a crippling disadvantage. I was losing stamina and quick. What felt like hours may have been mere seconds since I'd last seen him. I needed a break, taking one in the density of unkempt foliage, pinning my back against an alder tree. My panting was anything but discreet. I swallowed long, gasping breaths, my heart just about ready to pop right out of my chest. My rattled breathing turned into soft whimpering. I covered my mouth to suppress my grief, the picture of Carly getting her throat snapped at playing over and over again in my head. I'd turned her, I said to myself, and I was torn between her transformation and the realization that what everyone said about Reese was right. But my crying wasn't for my ears only. I had company. I ducked, barely missing a slash attack from the shadow figure that whizzed right by me. Strips of bark fell over my eyes as I rolled on my back and got up quickly to cover myself. I sensed someone over my shoulder. No 2, maybe 3 bodies in the perimeter. Shit, I was being cornered. Reese's betas had been following me. One of them got close enough to strike at my arm. Another slash, this one landing. I shirked back, nearly tumbling as I sidestepped. The pain stung, but my adrenaline kept me looking alive. I applied what Gideon had taught me, keeping my cool so I could retaliate accordingly. They were faster than me, stronger than me, and they were definitely strategic as they leaped in and out of my vision. They kept on their feet and in the air as they moved like pros, and against an unseasoned hybrid, this match seemed set in stone. Whatever the odds, I didn't give up. I stood there and fought the best I knew how. When another lunged at me, I stood my ground. My telekinetic ability was honed now, the power of meditation helping me focus my energy and tame my emotions. Gideon was no wolf, but he was great at exercising the power of both mind and body. And for a girl like me, that guidance came in handy in more ways than I could imagine. Just like that, I reached my hand out and sent the bastards flying high. I plucked him from the air and sent him crash landing into a tree. Another capitalized and ran up behind me, snatching me in his arms. Gideon taught me to fight dirty, and I didn't hold back. I shoved my heel into the tip of his shoe, and once he crouched over, I gave him a mean backside headbutt. With his hands covering his bloody nose, he left his dangling pair wide for punishment. I didn't hesitate to show him how much I appreciated being stalked and attacked. Once I rammed my foot between the legs, he howled into the moon, and I dished out a swinging kick right across his face. The last of Reese's betas came from above, leaping from the tree branch and over my head. I dodged him, but I didn't get to retaliate, because as soon as his feet landed on the ground, a bullet from nowhere carved into his skull. The sight of his burning entry wound made my eyes grow twice as wide. I didn't hesitate to bucket and run, realizing that it had been a hunter's bullet who killed the guy. It was one thing to have one of the deadliest wolves out there for you, but another to have a hunter on my tail. I wouldn't survive, not by standing around and fighting a good fight. Without a moment to pat myself on the back, I escaped, right into an abandoned cabin in the woods. The idea of cornering myself scratched at the back of my mind. I'd be a sitting duck if I stayed here, but at the very least, I'd know where he'd be coming from. Just as long as I blocked all of the exits and pulled the dusty shades down. Unfortunately, things seldom went my way, because as soon as I opened the door and stepped foot into the cabin, something large and heavy smacked me against the back of my head, rendering me unconscious. Next scene, the back of my head burned, the unbridled pain making the sound of blood flowing through me 10 times more audible. It felt like every nerve in my brain was pulsating violently, my inability to process everything unaided by the hazy view as I opened my eyes. I took a hard blow, my body still registering the pain all over. But as much as I tried, I couldn't move an inch until I realized that I was tied to a chair in the middle of the rundown cabin I'd just walked into. My legs clung to the legs of the chair, and my arms were pinned behind my back along the backrest. My mouth was duct-taped, and I had a ring carved on the wooden floor around me. I swallowed hard, trying to ignore the constant siren ringing in my ears from my head trauma. Luckily, it started dialing back a tad, enough where I could try pulling some pieces together. There was one beaming light coming from a lantern across the room on the table that looked like starbursts in my blurry eyes. The rest of the rustic space felt empty, with tarp covering most of the furniture. I looked over my shoulder and caught a fireplace going. It was small, barely enough heat to spread around. I doubt whomever abducted had the chimney fuming for my sake. And given everything that slammed me tonight, I was hot from adrenaline. The cold air didn't faze me. Something else did. "There you are, darlin'," this woman who sprung out of nowhere said just as I reeled my head forward. She made my thumping heart skip a beat, my body instantly tightening up at her abrupt appearance. Where the hell did she come from? I didn't even hear her walk in. "Sorry about the whole hostage treatment. I had to cover my hide," she said in a slight southern accent, her face dangerously close to mine as she crouched at my level. I shirked my head back, this woman not taking a hint. As she drew closer to me, the more I tried pulling away, I started capturing her features. She had short brown hair, the same shade of brown as mine. She had it framing her face, outlining her features more. By the looks of it, she was no older than 20. The hint of color in her eyes brought out her sharp smile, and although creepy up close, I swore I recognized it from somewhere. Don't worry, Reese won't find you here. For all he knows, this place doesn't exist. You gotta love witch magic. Mom's bloodline has all of the good stuff, don't it? A wash of chills came over me. Mom, what was she saying? That I was her sister? She absorbed my disgruntled and confused expression, and her smile went flat. The look of sympathy came over her, but I couldn't tell if it was genuine or not. She stared at me like I was incredibly naive, until she cocked her head to the side and asked me, "Oh no, she didn't tell ya." She sucked her teeth. Well, shoot, that wasn't very nice of her, now was it? It's bad enough that she sold me to the devil, pretended I didn't exist. I guess there's one thing she was always good at, huh? She giggled. Sis, Gladys is our mother. My eyes blew up. She'd courted Miles for quite some time. I heard it from the grapevine. No, I refused. I refused to believe her. My Auntie Gladys, the woman who had raised me for all of my life, was my mother. Well then, that must mean you ain't know a lick of magic, which means I don't have to worry about those pesky incantations. She pinched her fingers along the edge of the tape over my mouth and stripped it off fast. The removal stung, but not as badly as being lied to all of my life. From my mother, no less. A witch and a wolf who'da thunk it, right? She drew away from me, the grin on her face enjoying the sting of betrayal on mine. Father's true mate was barren. They'd been trying to have a baby for a long while. He got impatient and started getting awfully tempted. There was one little number that caught his attention. I don't know the details on how they met, but I was told that it felt like a match made in heaven. Not too long after, Mama got pregnant with a set of twins. What a joy. But not for Mama. She got worried. She knew her payment would be due soon, and after 9 safe months, a warlock came to collect his debt. What are you saying? I breathed through my quivering lips. Only what you might have already worked out in that head of yours. She gave me up to that warlock, her firstborn, didn't even get to enjoy free life for all of 60 seconds. She wouldn't. Gladys wouldn't do such a... No? There are a lot of things you don't know about that woman, Thea. She traded her daughter for immortality. No, I mumbled, heartbroken. I guess you were saved by the grace of God. 'Cause if it had been you who'd popped out first, you'd be the one standing here in my place. The script would have flipped. But no, there's no trading places. It's much too late for that. What's done is done. You gotta live the life you wanted, while I got to live in a literal hell on earth. I wanted to apologize because I believed she was my sister. That familiar smile, it was mine. We weren't identical twins, but the resemblance was as bright as day. The only difference was that she was slightly taller than me and spiteful. Even though she was the one who'd trapped me here, my heart wept for her. When I looked at her, all I could see was a life that could have been. She went on to tell me how badly she'd been treated, the pain and torture that she'd endured. I was his slave, she said, trying to keep that brave smile on her face as she paced back and forth in front of me, contracted to do anything and everything he wanted. I am sorry, I whispered, suddenly unable to look at her straight. Oh, don't be. The lashes, the beatings, and the endless abuse wasn't your fault. She's to blame. For every second I suffered, I'll make sure to repay her in kind. I cringed. I've been hunting her down for quite some time now, but she was hidden. Hiding was another thing she was good at. Yet I was hell-bent on finding her. I swore that my years of searching will not be in vain. Given my tenacity, I was growing oh so very weary. I'd just escaped my imprisonment, leaving the warlock to decipher the magic trap I'd left for him. Till this day, I've been running and hunting. Vengeance about the only thing keeping me together. So you could imagine my surprise when I got a tip from someone just as eager to find the McLeod family. I gave her a confused look. The regime's silly, but not just any old hunter. No, this one got a bone to pick with the last standing onyx wolf. What? Now, I don't want to spoil the surprise. You'll see him in due time. Our daddy turned his daddy into a nice steaming pile of flesh and bones. Miles had a real knack for leaving hunters in the dust. Unfortunately, he got front row seats to the show. He ain't appreciate that much. So why the hell is he only going after me? I heaved. You've got onyx blood in you too. Ah, what's wrong, sis? Tired of feeling special all of a sudden? She said, laughing at me. You know, he got lucky. He would have died that night too. It was a full moon, a terrible time to fight a pack. But it was the last day before they transitioned into another location, where they'd have more ground to cover. Daddy had his jowls deep inside his neck until another hunter pushed him off. He's lucky to be alive, only problem is now he's the one thing he hates. But I gotta say, he's the strongest Omega I've ever laid my pretty little eyes on. I guess being turned by a strong alpha does that to ya. How could you turn on your pack like this? I asked her in tears. Working for the regime for the same hunters who murdered your family? She scoffed. The nerve of you to ask me that? I had no family, not even the woman who gave me life wanted me. She sold my soul for her selfish needs, for immortality. So tell me, was I ever really wanted? Was I ever really needed? I suffered long years of despair, and during that time I thought long and hard about what I wanted in my worthless life. I wanted to erase my history, starting with my mother, and then take everything she ever loved away. I want to make her pay for what I had to go through, the misery, the anguish. I fought long years to keep myself from ending it all. But no, that'd be too easy for her. I couldn't let her off like that. I couldn't give her that satisfaction. This is Gladys you're talking about? I shouted. You have no idea what she's like. My auntie is a kind-hearted soul. She'd never hand you over at her own will. Why don't you wake up and see her for what she really is, a selfish witch? She barked back and then reeled herself away from me. She dropped her shoulders and recomposed herself. Once the heavy heaving stopped, the haunting silence did too. Tabitha, that's what she called me. I'd long abandoned that name. That little girl crying to the heavens that night doesn't exist anymore. She gasped happily. Don't you worry, sweetie. We are just getting started, so strap in your seatbelts. Tonight is going to be a doozy. What are you going to do to me? Why, honey, you're bait. I looked up to her confused. Not for Gladys, unfortunately. As part of my promise to my good hunter buddy, you need to bring in as many wolves as possible. And since Reese is looking for you, he's going to have one hell of a time taking out his beta wolves. That was him who shot that wolf in the woods. Well, aren't you a smart cookie? How are you going to do that? You have an illusion spell up, don't you? I guesstimated. He won't be able to find me. No, but he knows the general location of where you are. He must have suspected you'd walk right in here, otherwise he wouldn't have this area laced with his betas. Unfortunately, we didn't find him. But we got you instead. Someone just as good, if not better. His pack is not the only one you'd attract. The more, the merrier, she snickered. We are talking about the baddest team up in hunter history. Trust me, little sis. I can hold my own. I was shaking inside. I didn't know where to put myself. This level of secrecy numbing me to my core. My sister reached over to me and snatched the necklace around my neck. The same tracking device that our mother gave me for my birthday. Cute gift. But this little number is a deal breaker. She crushed it in her fist, the amount of strength she had making me wary.
Chapter 20. Austin, that a bunch of incompetent knuckleheads. How the hell could they allow her to leave? The excuse she gave wasn't enough to stop me from slamming them for her disappearance. Deep down, I just knew she was in trouble. Worst case scenario, she bumps into Reese. And at a time like this, the bastard wouldn't hold back from ripping her apart. Fucking hell, I growled, the assembly line of betas I gathered in the study room looking away from me shamefully. I knocked the shelves of books and made an entire scene before Gideon casually walked in. Get the hell out of my sight, all of you, I barked at them through my panting breath, my rage scaring them off like little pups. I need you to get it together, he said calmly, as if unbothered by the news. Oh yeah? Tell me, hotshot, how do you expect me to do that when my mate is missing? She isn't your mate, he said in a matter-of-fact tone. I snickered. Really? That tribute to the wolf god says differently. Sorry, pal. She isn't pissing on just one part of the woods anymore. He cocked his eyebrow at me. Werewolf reference. She has a tracker. I started receiving the signal a few seconds ago. I suggest we get moving now. It's already fading. Is that normal? No, actually, it isn't. Then come on, I said, snatching my leather jacket from the couch and rushing out. We have no time to lose. We'll need backup, he said, stopping me short. I pivoted to him, the expression on my face giving him an answer. No, we deal with this ourselves. If this is about your pride, tuck it and save us the trouble, he scolded me, his gait at me strong. We are talking about Thea's life here. This isn't the time to spare your betas. How about you stop thinking with your emotions for a minute and play this strategically? If I send the little betas I have left into the pit, then we are fucking screwed. Think investment. We need them alive. Reese probably has Thea. Let's not give him her army too, I said to him sternly. Gideon gave me the silent, intense stare down before he turned toward the exit. I released my breath, kicking myself in the nuts for being afraid of him. My theory still stands. The giant wasn't human. And before I found myself on the losing end of a fight, I'd rather not get on his bad side. We traveled to his location by car. The previous owner of this abode left a sexy set of wheels in his garage. Too bad I didn't have time to admire the sexy style of this black Bugatti Veyron. But I did get to enjoy its speed. This technological masterpiece was faster than a werewolf on steroids, and it got us to our destination quicker than I could bat a fucking eye. When I parked the car along the curb, we walked the rest of the way down into the park. Once it lost the trimmed edges and the friendly tones, we reached the woods. I'm catching her scent, I said, Gideon continuing to use his imaginary compass to guide us to Thea. I'm also catching something else. An alpha's sense of smell was better than a beta's, and 10 times stronger than an omega's. Something else lingered in the air, and it was keeping me on edge. I think Gideon was picking up on something too, his constant shifting making me anxious. His eyes scoped left and right, but he didn't break his pace. Not until we got to an area that was no different than where we'd been, besides the creek a few yards in front of us. The trail ends here, he said. Strange. Her scent is strongest around this patch of dead grass right here. But I don't see her anywhere. Don't call out for her. You'd reveal our location. No shit, genius, I scoffed, just as I sucked my breath in, prepared to call out for her like a desperate idiot. Let's keep moving. The more we walked around, the less confident I got in finding her. Her scent fluctuated, warm in some spots, cold in others. I was growing restless after 5 minutes, until Gideon stopped short by the creek. We are being followed, he said, and I suddenly found myself being blocked by the Sasquatch. The movement on that bastard Reese was unprecedented. Luckily for me, Gideon was just as fast-footed. He grabbed Reese's wrist, his sharpened claws pointed at his face. With his free hand, Reese followed through, Gideon countering him by sweeping his arm away and yanking on it. I heard Reese's socket pop. The darkness in his eyes glowed, the prick summoning more power to resist Gideon. Shit! I slipped through my teeth. But before I could lend Thea's bodyguard a hand, Reese swept Gideon's legs, the giant stumbling back first on the ground. I see the cowardly mouse made an upgrade, Reese mocked, as he had Gideon pinned. I am no beta, Gideon retorted. Reese's body weight kept him on the ground, his resistance on him straining. I saw beads of sweat build up on Gideon's forehead while he kept Reese's hands at bay. No, but you sure do fight like one, Reese grumbled, then elongated his claws hanging over Gideon's neck. I rushed over to give him a firm kick to his side, so Gideon could have a fighting chance. But as soon as Reese turned my way, I knew I was fucked. Heel pup, wait your turn, he snarled at me, and we locked eyes. However sparingly, the damage was already done. Reese brought me to my knees, my hand clenching onto my stomach in agony. Reese's special trait was broken, as he had the power to weaken anyone with just a stare. As long as he caught your gaze, he'd make you bleed, and the internal pain was nothing to mess around with. Once he had me down, I closed my eyes. He was limited when the link was gone. The bastard turned back to Gideon, and knowing him, he'd try his death stare again on him. Especially after I heard Gideon crack a few of his bones. The temptation to look nudged at me, but I didn't want to die here. I kept my eyes closed, and went off of smell and sound alone. There was a light scuffle, followed by Reese's baffled comment, What? What are you? That sound of him freaking out was reassuring. My guess, Gideon was immune to his superpowers. Gouge his fucking eyes out, I barked at Gideon, with my knees to the ground and my fists tightening up. Even though his regeneration was quick, it'd buy us enough time to beat Thea's location out of him. Where is Thea? Gideon growled at Reese. I heard a thud, followed by a series of ground-shaking punches, and then a battle cry that forced my eyes wide open. Reese was transforming into a mid-range form, and he was strong enough to push Gideon back. Gideon flew, Reese's strength launching him into a row of trees. His body broke through them all, and the faithful watchdog was down for the count. With Reese's new plaything out of the picture, he turned to me. For the first time, I didn't shirk back. I squared my shoulders and closed my eyes, giving myself a fighting chance. "This is for Paxton, you son of a bitch." Off of scent alone, I tracked him down. The small disadvantage of having my eyes closed would have normally been manageable, but against a foe like Reese, it could be downright detrimental. Either way, I gave him my all, and flung a square punch at him. One, just one. All I needed was to land one hit on him, and I could go full berserk on his cannibal ass. I was pent up on vengeance. This asshole took my best friend, and now he took my mate away from me. He needed to be punished, and it was just that I'd be the one to do him in. Too bad someone had other plans for us. A shot flicked Reese's right ear just as he shifted his body and he dismantled. I'd never seen the fucker vanish so fast in my life. Honestly, his fear struck a chord through me too. We escaped now and asked questions later. From the sound of it, we were being hunted. He fled, and I followed him like stink on a garbage lid. There was no path that he took that I didn't. Granted, the prick was faster than me, I held my own. Until we reached an area in the stretch of the woods that seemed uncharted. Reese stopped to point his nose in the air, and I stared at his right ear that continued to sizzle and bleed. "What? Slow region?" I taunted. "Idiot! This hunter is using a special bullet." He cupped his ear, and then his head jumped, his body pivoting behind him where we both saw Gideon just standing there. "Okay, seriously, what the fuck are you?" I insisted. "So I take it you don't have Thea," he said, addressing Reese. "If I did, would I be in a place like this?" Reese answered back bitterly. "I strongly believe so. Your desire to kill the Highlander Alpha comes in many forms. Using her to lure him here is one of them. I appreciate the credit, but I am here for the same reason you are. How about you enlighten me then? Her mating scent is currently untraceable. How do you know to find her here?" "It's because you lost her, didn't you?" I said, shooting the blame on him. "You better pray to your fang god that the hunter didn't get to her, or I swear I'll—" "Please don't bother with your feeble threats. Save it, you ascot-wearing freak. I'm waiting," Gideon pressed on, and Reese sighed. He raised his broken hand at eye level, and the both of us watched as the bones in his fingers fell back into place. I used her co-worker to pull her out from hiding. Tonight, she was more than eager to go out. After she noticed I had bad intentions, she ran, and my betas and I chased her. "Your betas?" I said, sharpening my vengeful eyes at him. "I can't believe you were actually trying to kill her." "They were instructed to take her in, alive." "I've heard enough! I say we wrap this up, Gideon," I growled. "Let's decapitate this sorry wolf-eating fucker for good." "Better idea, how about we put our differences aside and search for Thea?" Gideon suggested, and then turned his glare back to Reese. "After which, I won't hesitate to ground you 6 feet under." Reese smirked. "All right, deal. But not here. We need to find a safe location to re-strategize." "Re-strategize?" I grumbled. "Have you lost it? We just confirmed that there's a hunter in the area. If we leave now, we are practically handing Thea to the regime. Her scent lingers, yet we cannot find her. Has it ever occurred to you that this might be a trap? The regime, they are reputable for a good reason. I'm going to go on a limb and say that you never had the unfortunate pleasure of crossing paths with them. Not personally. Once they find a wolf trail, they stick to it and use it to draw more of our kind out. It's how the Onyx Wolves ultimately met their downfall. I don't know about you, but I'm not ready to give up years of work for some low-breed hybrid bitch, am I right?" I cut him off, finishing his line for him. "Because that's all Thea is to you, you selfish piece of shit." He turned to me with a hot glare. "She's my fated mate, and you made it damn clear that you rejected her. At least I gave her a home. Stealing what's not yours. I can see why you thought it fair to go after her like that. I've taken out more of your men than you can count. It's only just that you return the favor. Because that's what this is all about, right? Getting even? Unfortunately for you, the scar doesn't run so deep for someone I care little about." "You heartless son of a—" "Hey, calm down," Gideon said, stepping in between us as I charged my way to the dirtbag. "He is right. This smells like a trap. We need to regroup before they drop on us in high numbers."